In our last Dark Pictures check-in, we looked at the new game titles, and I made some fairly wild suggestions, which is always fun, but now let's think a little deeper about what we can expect from the upcoming games in the Dark Pictures franchise. First, naturally, is Directive 8020, which a quick Google search for NASA 8020 will reveal is a real-life directive dealing with ecosystem protection, specifically the kind of sterilizing that NASA must do before landing something on another planet. The real-life directive is easy enough to understand. Landing Earth bacteria on another planet, one with an ecosystem which is completely unprepared for it, could be utterly disastrous, killing everything it came in contact with. So astronauts have to operate with the utmost caution when traveling to other planets, lest they destroy the thing that they've gone there to study. The directive has a flip side as well, all about the methods that astronauts must use to ensure that no foreign bacteria make it back to Earth in uncontrolled conditions. The directive is just an order to make sure no contamination gets to other planets, and that no extraterrestrial contamination gets to Earth. NASA likely has protocols for how that's all specifically to be accomplished. What does this information hint at in the game's plot? The most obvious implication is that the astronauts are going to find some sort of life on the moon, but that the life in question, whether it be as big as a hideous monster as tiny as a mind-controlling bacteria, is so dangerous that the game's characters find themselves trapped on the moon because NASA can't take the risk of bringing them home. Would the characters then try to get back on their own, or would they accept their fate and die on the moon? That could make for some fantastic horror and tense decisions, especially since it would all be taking place in an incredibly deadly location. And if they were to, say, find some kind of a decrepit base already existing on the moon, that would give them a chance to use an old-timey radio, which has happened in every Dark Pictures game so far. The one thing that puzzles me about this whole moon base or moon landing premise is how Supermassive could possibly fit in a 50-element clue board, as appeared in all of the other games, into this kind of space exploration context. In each game, the player explores a ruined location and finds evidence of what happened there. For that to play out this time, they would have to go to the kind of abandoned secret base full of evidence I just mentioned. Now, I don't know if they'd want to do that, though, since it's really close to the premise of The Thing and At the Mountains of Madness, which could wind up seeming like they're just doing House of Ashes over again. I don't know how they're going to pull off this moon horror concept with the established Dark Pictures format, but that just makes me more excited, as I trust their storytelling skills and love it when they surprise me. Next up is The Craven Man. And this theory is a bit of a stretch, but hear me out. Well, I think the game will likely still be folk horror, given the Wicker Man looking thing in the logo. What if this is also Supermassive finally making the slasher game we've been wanting from them since the original version of Until Dawn, in which the killer was just a murderer in a parka? So, here's my incredibly flimsy evidence. 1. This slasher from the opening credits. More and more pieces from the opening credits wind up in the games, so he's worth considering. 2. The title would certainly be an appropriate one for a slasher-themed game. It's easy to imagine someone telling the story of a man who fled from something, became despised by a community, and wound up banished to the woods, where he turned into a vicious killer. I've seen that story more than a few times, and I'm sure Supermassive could tell it well. 3. Here's the real stretch. Character names. Jason and Clarice are both named after people with a strong connection to vampire fiction. Clarice Stokes is named after Bram Stoker, with Jason Kolchak being named after Carl Kolchak, the main character from The Night Stalker, a movie about a journalist battling a vampire. Here's where it gets interesting. Clarice is likely also named after Clarice Starling, the main character of Silence of the Lambs, one of the all-time most famous pieces of serial killer fiction. And Game 4 is serial killer themed. So both of Clarice's names are horror genre references. Last name is about the game she's in, first name is about a future game. What if Jason's the same way? Just like Clarice, his last name references the genre of the game he's in. Is it possible that just like her, his first name references the genre of an upcoming game? Despite the fact that there hasn't been a Friday the 13th movie in almost 20 years, get off your asses, people. The name Jason remains inextricably linked to the slasher genre, and with the precedent Clarice set, it's entirely possible that Jason is named that way to tease a slasher game. And The Craven Man is the game most likely to be that slasher game. Unless, we get a moon slasher, which seems unlikely given, Jason X. Intercession. Given the inverted cross, the Gothic script, and the poster reference to The Exorcist in Devil in Me, and Sacrificial Knife from the opening credits, I was definitely leaning towards predicting that this was going to be possession-themed horror, likely tied in with some kind of cult horror. Some have theorized that the title's use of an almost medieval script may be more significant than its connection to Catholicism. The theory is that Supermassive Games is going to make a game that doesn't just start in the distant past, but is actually set there. Maybe it's even a Burning Ages tale, when accused witches were being slaughtered all over Europe. Black Death is a hell of a movie about this period in British history, and the story of a group of knights or religious investigators going to a small area to look for a witch and finding more than they bargained for would be an amazing departure. A Plague Tale: Innocence showed us that it's possible to make a popular game with religious themes using this setting. Could Supermassive follow in their footsteps and deliver an amazing horror experience? Probably. Winterfold. This is the title I have the least amount of theories in regards to. Between the sign with the bloody handprint and the zombies from the opening credits, this is likely a zombie-themed game, which would dovetail nicely with what the Aegis agents say at the end of the game about it being difficult to contain. Zombie plagues tend to be that way. Would they be fast or slow zombies, though? Will Supermassive do another version of the decide whether or not to shoot a bitten person scene? Hopefully. Like broken radios, it could become a theme with them. Oh, death. No updates or theories here. I will share a great theory that showed up in my YouTube comments, though, because I will find it delightful if this happens. My theory about the premonitions in The Devil in Me, and plenty of other people have posited this, is that they're going to appear in creepy serial killer photographs, maybe even Polaroids of the killer's victims or the traps he builds. Now, this new theory is that the player won't be seeing premonitions at all. The fact that the mannequin in the hotel premonition is already burned suggests that the killer uses the same traps over and over again. So what if instead of the player finding premonitions of a deadly situation to come, they find videotapes or film strips of other victims in the past going through traps, and they have to figure out what's happening based on a tiny sliver of evidence? It would be a heck of a lot of work, of course. It's much easier to just take a clip from later in the game and put an eerie filter on it, but it would impress me no end if they actually did something like that. May not be likely, but it would be incredibly cool. I've been the Hidden Object Guru. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please remember to like and subscribe. Special thanks go out to my patrons, Desire, Marissa, Eduardo, Brian, and Joanne. You can always find me at my live streams, weeknights at 9 Eastern and weekends at noon. We'll see you back here for more Supermassive Games content. But until then, au revoir.